Most are farmers from different parishes with different crops, but they're all here for the same flight and the same mission: trade with Cuba. Louisiana to Havana. Only a 90-minute flight, yet a world away. The year 1959 marks the end of the Cuban Revolution, when Castro's communist regime took power. And 1960 marks the beginning of the U.S. embargo, creating a barrier of trade between our two countries. But prior to 1960, relations between Cuba and Louisiana looked much different. Spanish architecture in the French Quarter and Old Town Havana are echoes of a shared colonial history. And the proximity between our coasts made relations easier still. Before 1960, Cuba was one of Louisiana's strongest trading partners.
More than 62% of all imports from and exports to Cuba came through the port of New Orleans. Huge amount of trade.
It's a relationship this group hopes to restore.
We estimate that we can reestablish at least $300 to $400 million a year in agricultural trade alone.
But in their quest to reestablish history, they've already made some history of their own. How does it feel that the plane's here?
Good. We're excited that the plane's here.
This is believed to be the first round-trip flight from New Orleans to Cuba in over 50 years. A smooth landing to mark their mission's beginning. In Havana, Brianna Malloy, KATC TV3. From sunup to sundown, there's work to do.
It's a very intense schedule that we have.
From touring Havana's new port to a local organic farm. One need keeps coming up again and again.
The trade we stayed in the field of grain is very important for us because we import rice, maize, and soybean every year, hundreds of millions of dollars.
With 11 million people and 3 million visitors each year, Cuba has a lot of mouths to feed. But a lack in farming technology makes it impossible to keep up.
They just don't have the budget or the financial backing to be able to farm like we do.
80% of the food in Cuba is imported from other countries.
So is this rice from here or from Vietnam?
Vietnam, no?
Vietnam.
It's a need David Bertrand, a rice farmer from Welsh, believes Louisiana can meet.
Most of the operations are 4,000 acres of rice alone and 2,000 acres of crawfish. That's the norm in South Louisiana.
And that norm has made Louisiana the third largest rice exporter in the United States. And Cuba, per capita, is the largest rice consumer in the Western Hemisphere. A shipment of rice from Louisiana would take 2 days by boat, while a shipment from Vietnam, where Cuba buys most its rice now, takes 42 days. So what's preventing Bertrand from selling his crop today? The United States law. It only allows exports to Cuba for cash in advance. This sends Cuba, which has to pay mostly with credit, looking to the east.
In many cases, we need to buy these cereals for other countries that are far from Cuba.
But a bill to overturn that law has already been introduced. It's sponsored by Rick Crawford from rice-producing Arkansas. And among the co-sponsors, U.S. Representatives Ralph Abraham and Charles Bustani from Louisiana. And although it's still unknown whether the bill will be heard in the next session, these farmers are preparing now.
So if we can get some of the political issues solved, I think it's going to happen quicker than we imagine, hopefully.
Watch your step and follow me.
Meeting with Cuban officials, strategizing with Cuban economists, and learning from the culture all around them. Also that if trade opens up with Cuba, Acadiana lands the deal. In Havana, Brianna Malloy, KATC TV3. The streets of Havana feel stuck in time. When U.S. trade stopped, many new products stopped with it. Classic cars run the roads and historic buildings line the streets.
Que se ha dedicado a mantener lo que teníamos.
But cracked and weathered walls remind us that time always takes its toll.
Tratar de subsistir con lo poco que tenemos.
Necessity is the mother of ingenuity, and Cuba is rife with both. Lamps made from toothpaste tubes, satellites made from lunch trays. Even here at Atelier, one of Cuba's finest restaurants, its invention that keeps business rolling.
Cuba es un reto. Cuando tú estás afuera de Cuba tienes la posibilidad de encontrarlo todo. Puedes hacer un menú con los ojos cerrados.
Every day, gourmet chef Michael Calvo has to invent a new menu based on whatever ingredients are available.
La materia prima a veces de buena calidad, a veces de media calidad. Los productos trabajamos por temporadas, mayormente porque se desaparecen unos, los otros. Y es un problema.
But here in his restaurant, Calvo can sense change on the horizon. American customers are a common sight. Some who visit even offer to bring him new products from the States. And Calvo says he always asks for seasonings and new recipes.
Siempre yo pido, la gente me dice, tú nunca pides nada para ti. Y yo, sí, yo pido para mí, cosas para mi cocina, cosas para mi trabajo.
And now, Calvo prepares lunch for a new group of Americans, 94 members of Louisiana's trade mission. And in learning where they're from, he shares a lifelong dream.
My dream is someday go to Louisiana for learn the Creole food to Louisiana. I think it's the principal, the food in the United States of America.
But the changes Calvo sees in his clientele are ripples from the global stage. The Obama administration brought forth a new era in Cuban relations. On December 17, 2014, it's announced President Obama plans to normalize relations.
Today, America chooses to cut loose the shackles of the past.
July 1, 2015, flags were raised, and both countries reopened their embassies.
As two peoples who are no longer enemies or rivals, but neighbors.
And in March 2016, the first family, for the first time in almost 90 years, pays Cuba an official state visit.
I have come here to bury the last remnant of the Cold War in the Americas.
Esos sueños que tuvimos mucho se están logrando, se están llegando. Y se respira un aire de muchos cambios.
In a land frozen in time, Calvo embraces the future. If there's rice, this rice farmer will find it.
There's got to be some rice.
Whether it be in grocery stores.
We're at the largest grocery store in Havana, and there's not a grain of rice.
Open markets, or even in Michael Calvo's kitchen. So perhaps it's no surprise that while the rest of the group continues meeting with government officials, Paul Guillory and his brother-in-law David Bertrand set out for a meeting of their own.
Talk to a rice farmer. There's something about the Brotherhood of Rice Farmers. That's all.
And with a lot of driving and stopping.
It's called a deep well. Just curious to see it.
And some strategic help. They finally find a familiar field.
Those are little patches, all that's hundreds of little plants, and you see where they've planted. My God, I've never seen that.
And meet the man who made it.
It's pretty. Your rice is pretty. It's a.
Está muy bonito el arroz.
Yeah, it's a good job. Yeah. I think shaking hands, one-on-one, people to people, that's the beginning.
But back in Havana, Louisiana officials were shaking hands too. Commissioner of Agriculture Mike Strain presented the Cuban government with a memorandum of understanding.
It's a pledge of mutual support, working together to grow agricultural trade, industrial trade.
In upcoming months, Cuban officials will revise the memorandum. And on a state visit in October, Governor Edwards is scheduled to sign it. But for Guillory, there's no deeper understanding than talking rice farmer to rice farmer.
Farmers everywhere have a fraternity that no one else understands. Enjoy.
And there's no substitute for a shared cigar and a good laugh.
And he smiled and greeted us like brothers.
In Havana, Brianna Malloy, KATC TV3. In Havana, this girl goes to this photography school, run by this man.
The miracle of a kid knowing that he can make a living if he would need to.
This man went on this adventure.
It's a tool that I use to express feelings.
To photograph this abandoned coffee plantation.
I love coming to this place.
with this old friend.
And then I asked him to help me find some special places that I wanted to photograph that nobody else was taking pictures.
And this old friend helped him open this gallery.
He captures an image of Cuban people. When you look at it, you look like you're looking right into their soul.
And this gallery was opened in this city for this festival. And it was there that he sold this picture that helped him buy this camera.
Actually, I'm right now buying cameras for the kids with that money.
And because all that happened, back in Havana, this girl is learning to take pictures.
This month, we shared with you the story of Michel Calvo, a gourmet chef in Havana, Cuba. His dream was to come to South Louisiana to learn more about our food and our culture. And after our story aired, the people of Arnaville stepped up. Brianna Malloy reports how they made his dream come true. Her story, News Tonight at 10.
In Havana, Cuba, standing in his kitchen, gourmet chef Michel Calvo shared his lifelong dream.
My dream is someday go to Louisiana for learn the Creole food to Louisiana.
And now, almost 1,000 miles away in the town of Arnaville, that dream is becoming a reality.
You realize my dreams. I'm happy for that.
The day starts off at Little Big Cup, sharing a recipe of pork stew.
Pork stew at its best.
Calvo is amazed by the spices.
The spices Cajun, fabulous. It's fabulous.
So the chef sends him with a gift.
Thank you, my friend. This is for make a lot of things in Cuba.
From the restaurant, Calvo travels to a local home for a lesson in home-cooked gumbo.
Oh, we'll teach you everything you need to know and more.
A lesson from the experts, mothers and grandmothers.
The closeness of our culture. And what does that mean? It means music and food sharing things together.
In this kitchen is a concoction of languages, cultures, and countries. But just like a good gumbo, each ingredient makes the others better.
Wow, feel like a family. This is a new family here.
In Arnaville, Brianna Malloy, KATC, TV3.
And Calvo also traveled to New Orleans to learn techniques from top chefs there in the Crescent City.